Jets Twitter, where you at? Come through. Ooh, I'm unmuted.
We are live. We are live. We are live. Todd,
We
what
are
we?
live.
And we're back.
Live.
And we're
We
back.
are live.
Episode 11. Episode 11. And we
Happy
have
almost New Year.
Yeah, happy almost New Year. We're like a day away. I probably will be hearing this, and you'll be like a couple hours away. But yeah.
Bring
So
in the New Year with the on the bump crew.
yeah, we definitely have a solid show today. We have some good topics. As we said last week, the topics are getting better because there's more going on. And on the same note, we created kind of a system last week where we're going to do it sort of like rundown style, where we go through topics, and it makes it a little more organized and fun and can create more of a conversation. One thing that I just ran over the topics with Todd right before we started. But I just read a topic that just came through. It didn't just come through as breaking news, but I didn't see it before. But it is that our weekly update on DJ LeMahieu, and there was a report that the Dodgers are in on DJ LeMahieu. Came in, I saw it on WFAN, I want to say. WFAN's social accounts posted it. Again, this is probably another instance of them trying to, just posture him, his agents. But yeah, it was WFAN 42 minutes ago. It says Dodgers in talks with DJ LeMahieu. So another suitor for DJ in our weekly DJ update.
I mean, I feel like he has to go out now. Like, even if he doesn't want to, it's just like the next natural step. And like, if you're following the book on how to negotiate or how to get what you want from your team, from your desired suitor, you got to go out and find other options or that may be of equal or better value to try and sell your ideal suitor on what your value is. Because there's no value, just like in any industry, there's no value until there's a comp. And there aren't too many comps for in terms of like the last 10 years of baseball, in terms of a 32-year-old second baseman coming onto the market who didn't really, while he's produced, of course, he hasn't produced for, he hasn't had like a 10-year or even like a significant 5-year run, but he burst onto the scene, obviously. Maybe not burst onto the scene, that's strong, because everyone's known about DJ LeMahieu and his abilities, but he's really come into the zone as a top 2 or 3 second baseman in baseball, a bona fide MVP candidate, and a top 2 or 3 player on your team if you're one of the big contenders. So that doesn't come to the market very often. And the wild card here is that he's obviously 32, so you're not going to give him, it's not a Cano situation where you're giving him a 10-year deal. So Yankees aren't really sure what the market is, as we've seen kind of in this most recent week of baseball news. There aren't many teams that really feel like they're in the financial position to take on a lot of money right now. So there aren't that many suitors out there to begin with. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Dodgers present him an offer. The Mets, I'm sure, will come up with an offer at some point, and then he's going to have to go back to the Yankees and say, "This is what I got."
I think the Mets offer only comes if something happens with Springer. I don't see them getting Springer and DJ. I would think one or the other, and I think Springer right now is more of a fit for the Mets because center field, you need a defense, a guy that can lead off. He does everything that we need right now. I mean, DJ would be a great fit, but he would fit with anybody. But I think the closest comp you have contract-wise, and it's a weird one because of the difference, right? The closest comp that I could think of was the Daniel Murphy signing a couple years ago, but that wasn't even a full year of Murphy earning that contract. It was literally 3 weeks in the playoffs of him earning that contract, and 3 weeks in the playoffs got him 3 years, 37, different market, of course, different player, and wasn't a full year, but that's the closest thing that I can wrap my head around a comp at that age. The best thing right now that I think Yankees can do with DJ, you can tell his agent is trying to push his market. He's trying to come up with all these teams that have interest, whether they're correct or not. They're trying to get their market going. The Yankees have to find somebody on the market that's a close enough comparison that they can be like, even if it's a trade, and just leak that they are interested in trading for player X or player Y or Lindor, even in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like, leak something that starts to lead them to be like, all right, we have life after DJ. Because until then, right now, from what we've seen and heard, DJ has all the leverage. Because all we've heard is the Yankees don't want to spend in general, so they'll do it if they can get DJ, but they don't really have an interest in spending. Doesn't seem like they want to, move their farm system away. So right now, it feels like DJ has all the momentum.
Yeah, and what we've seen in this past week or so that the trade market's moving much faster than the free agent market, and that's because teams are willing to part with I guess instead of cash, they're using their minor leaguers as bargaining chips, which obviously that's been used in baseball for years and years and years and years. So that's not different. But the fact that it's moving so much quicker than during this time, you usually see people, around this time, we saw Garrett Cole sign a big time contract last year. And with COVID going on and teams not sure of how many fans they'll have in the stadium, when, if at all, this year they'll get fans back in the stadium, what will people be willing to do about, going to a stadium? Everyone has their own opinion on that. So then you have to come up with other ways to kind of cost cut, I guess, because you're not turning the profit at the gates that you might have in a normal time.
Mm-hmm. I think, there was a report today, not a report, it came out, that the Bills will have 6,500 fans at their game. So I think, and that's a big step for New York. Other states have done it. That's a big step for New York to allow fans, and I think it's a good trial run for them. From what I've heard baseball-wise, it's going to come down to each and every team as if as same as it was, baseball this whole past season didn't, obviously, but same as it was for football, same as it's going to be for basketball at some point. Right now, I think they're all not having fans, but could change at some point. It's a good step for baseball, but like you said, there's no way of knowing for them. There's so much right now, and I think that's holding up the market. We talked about it last week, but there's so much uncertainty with everything, with what they're going to be able to afford, what the DH is going to look like, what the rosters are going to look like, what the schedule is going to look like. We have a rough draft on the schedule, but you never know what can happen. So there's just so much uncertainty that, like, even if you look at the college football playoff, which is happening Friday. So the national championship date is, I think, 2 Mondays after. So they have it in place right now that if something happens, they have another date for the final. They just released today. They have 2 other dates that they can use as postponement dates. So just simple things like that. That's literally going to be 2 weeks away. We're talking about a season that's 3 months away. So much can happen. And I just feel like these teams are afraid to spend, and that benefits teams like the Padres, teams like the Dodgers, teams like the Mets, and teams like Yankees and Red Sox to an extent. Because the Yankees, of course, they don't want to go over the tax, but if they wanted to, they'd have the money to do so.
Yeah, and I've even heard the Mets, Stevie Cohen doesn't really want to go over the luxury tax this year. He's kind of hinted at that. I think he's actually come out and said that. So it's going to be interesting. And he's even commented on the trades that have gone down, especially with the Padres. He was saying that because, of course, Mets fans, like Jets fans, are all irrational. And just sidebar here, I've been called out all day today by Jets fans for a simple response or simple reply I had to to a Jets talking head that's big in the Jets Twitterverse, and I was called out, misinterpreted tweet. We're taking stock, in my opinion, there way too much. I'm not an authority there. I'm not an authority on any sport opinion-wise, but Stevie Cohen is, because he owns a baseball team, and he's not only the owner of the Mets, he's been a fan of the Mets since the beginning of the Mets. So if anyone's to talk about what the state of the Mets are, it's Stevie Cohen. And he has said they don't have the farm system to go out and make these trades.
Yeah.
You know, the Padres have one of the deepest farm systems in the league, and they go make these trades, get Yu Darvish, get Blake Snell, and it didn't really impact their major league roster or their trajectory moving forward. So they can operate in this market.
Yeah. Well,
and still take on those contracts, which I don't know. I guess I'm a little interested to see how they end up managing that, because I think it's going to be a situation where if they don't do something major in the next 2-3 years, they're going to back out of these deals and try and offload stuff again.
Well, realistically, we started with the Mets point is they say they don't want to go over the tax, and Mets fans originally they read that and they got all nervous. But if you look at the way their tax line is right now, we're still, I think, before the Noah Syndergaard arbitration being finalized, we were at $56 million before tax line, and Noah came in about $1.5 million under. So $58 million, let's say. So you're $58 million before the tax line. That's still more than enough to even get two of these guys if you structure it right. So that doesn't concern me. And I'm going to send a disclaimer to Steve Cohen. I love him. He's my uncle, Uncle Stevie. But I will say, and I'm not even saying this for right now. I'm not worried about right now because I know he will make moves. But I know Mets fans. I know how they operate. And if he keeps talking on Twitter, and let's just say this offseason, I know he's going to make a move. Me personally. But if he doesn't, for whatever reason, and he does something small, like he gets Jackie Bradley and Jake Odorizzi, I guarantee the act and the act of him sending these tweets out, like, "Oh, I'm going to talk to the GM today." It's cute and it's fun right now, but I'm letting you know that will grow on the fans really fast if you don't make a move. It's fun, It's cute. It's Steve Cohen is tweeting. This is awesome. We never had an owner like this. It'll get bad fast and it'll get ugly. So, like I said, I know
Mets fans are rational. Jets fans are rational, as I've kind of experienced today. So we're all cut from the same cloth. I get the struggles of a Mets fan as a Jets and Knicks fan. I basically, by the traditions of New York sports, I should be a Mets fan. It just didn't play out that way. I was fortunate enough to align myself with the Yankees very early on. So
you touched on it quick, and it was the trades for the Padres, and that's the biggest story of the week from the Tampa Bay. So 2 trades happened. The Tampa Bay Rays and the Padres came together on a trade, and the Tampa Bay Rays traded Blake Snell to the Padres for a nice haul on the service. We'll talk more about the situation. But the Rays got Luis Patino, who's a top prospect for the Padres, really good arm. They got Francisco Mejia, a catcher.
Prospects, what do you do?
Okay. We'll jump right in and we'll get to you, Darvish, in a second. But I know what you're going to feel, but I think it fits what the Padres do. We saw they did it a couple years ago with Archer. They ended up getting Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow's still coming up, but that's a pretty good trade when you think Archer's done nothing.
That's a rare fleecing.
I mean, the
Pirates weren't in a position. The Padres are in a win now position. But the Pirates were nowhere near that. It made zero sense to trade away your best talent for a pitcher that isn't going to help you.
But
if you're acquiring Blake Snell and Yu Darvish, and you have the team that you had, and you played a competitive series with the Dodgers in the playoffs, you're getting these guys with the intentions of going head-to-head with Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, all those guys and trying to match them picture for picture in a series, a playoff series. The Pirates were nowhere near that, so that trade made no sense.
I don't think that
And
matters.
the Rays rightfully fleeced them.
No, I'm not. First of all, I'm not arguing that Padres made good trades because they did. They needed these players now. They have a deep farm system. But I don't think the Pirates comment makes sense because Archer, if you went
Pirates
to the
trade was terrible. It was a terrible
no, but if
trade.
I don't understand that. But if Archer went to the Red Sox at the time, who were winning, I don't think it matters. I don't think he pitches any better.
It's an organization though, so they probably wouldn't have given up 2 prospects for a 32-year-old pitcher who didn't have the most stellar track record.
But who's to say? Obviously, who's to say the way the Rays get their pitchers going? Who's to say that Snell wasn't a product of being perfectly used in Tampa Bay?
I'm very nervous about that. That's a possibility, especially now that he's going to a team where the pitching coach is a guy Yankees fans know all too well. Larry Rothschild, who is not he does nothing as a pitching coach. Pitching coaches in general, I'm not saying they don't do anything because they do, but I think people talk about pitching coaches way too much more than they're worth being talked about.
And also another point that Blake Snell should be a little bit worried about is Padres not the same as Tampa Bay, but they're very similar with analytics. They rely on analytics. They've had a couple games this year where they've stopped pitchers in the third inning. They used openers. They used mid-tier guys. So as much as Blake Snell, if he's going, they'll let him go because Padres are a little different in that regard.
Oh, Larry Rothschild will let him ride.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know. There's a part of me, I love the Darvish trade. We'll talk about that in a second. But part of me worries about Snell because of what I saw with Archer and of what I've seen the Tampa Bay pitchers before. If they leave, they work there. And maybe Blake Snell, his negatives about him, his weaknesses were hidden by them only letting him go 5 innings at a time.
I will say this about the Rays. They are the biggest tease in professional sports. If I was a Tampa Bay Rays fan, I don't know what corner I would put myself in screaming because every year, or not every year, consistently they get to this point. They work up to this point. They get to this point where they're, winning 85 to 95 games, get into the playoffs, make a bit of a run, have great pitchers. We talk about, the Rays, they have no payroll, that no one goes to their games, but they still, the analytics, they still do all this stuff. They groom their prospects. It goes well. Then when it comes time to payday, they back out. They don't, and that's the step that they're missing, is that they don't go for the kill.
But isn't that more of an issue?
You have teams on the ropes. You could go for the kill. Especially this year, the Red Sox are down. The Yankees, I'm not really sure what's going on. I think Howe and the Steinbrenner guys are essentially content running this as a profitability, maintaining a profit here. I don't think their main concern is winning. So the Rays have a shot, they still have a shot, but they really could have put their feet on the necks of the other team in the American League East and really just get it done.
But isn't that more of an issue with the structure in all these professional leagues of small market versus big market where there is no shot for these small market teams? You look at basketball, you had
the Rays have figured it out now.
But the Cavs had that quick run, right? They have LeBron, they get that title, and then LeBron leaves and they're back. I understand, but it's just a market of when a small market team gets that quick glimpse.
There's a salary cap in football. There's a salary cap in football, but I meant basketball.
But even in baseball, you had the Royals do the same thing, where they had that quick burst and they had to die out. They had to trade away guys. They had to let guys go because you can't sustain it. So I understand the criticism.
Rays have shot themselves in the foot, though. They don't want to build a new stadium. They don't want to go for it.
Well, you can't, though, because The stadium argument is you look at the Marlins who built
It's
this new stadium,
taxpayer
no one
funded,
goes.
unfortunately.
But the problem is they built one in Miami, no one goes.
Well,
So
Marlins suck.
how is that
Mostly.
kind of better in Tampa? Tampa is like 90% people who wouldn't come out to a ballpark anyway. I said that in the best way possible without saying just old people.
I've also heard
But-
that park is ridiculously located.
No, and I listen, I get it,
Saints.
but the criticism is fair. But on the same note, you can't expect Tampa Bay, who doesn't sell seats, and it's kind of not their fault completely.
Well, the Yankees are doing their own profit crunch thing in just a smaller or a larger scale, where they have higher costs. Yankees could slash their payroll to $80 million and turn a fat profit every year, because fans would still come to the stadium. They could still charge high amounts for seats, and the product might suck, but hey, they're the Yankees, so people still come out.
But honestly, the way the Rays work and the way they've structured their organization, this works. This is probably the best setup, even with trading guys like this, like Blake Snell, at a certain point of their career. For a small market team, it's the best thing we've seen a small market team have consistency for the last decade. I mean, say about Tampa Bay Rays, but for the last decade, I think they've had over 80 wins in 7 or 8 of the seasons. So for a small market team to be able to do that, however they're doing that, and to get a crack at to get into a World Series, and I believe they got past the decade, but they were in a World Series in 2007 against the Rockies. Eight. Yeah.
7
So
was the Red Sox.
so 8. So they've had that chance. Or was it Rockies or Phillies?
They played the Phillies. Phillies won.
Phillies, yeah. Rockies played the Red Sox. That's what it was.
Yeah.
But to get that success and to get a chance at that while you're building an organization a certain way is one of the best stories for a small market team. What the Padres do is they find value in players, and once that value is gone, they let them go. I know it's a different story, but we praise Belichick for doing that. I know he's won, so that changes things, but we praise him for running that system. Now, if he didn't win, would we feel differently? Of course, probably. So maybe that's a bad point. But I don't know. I just think the Rays have a system. It works. I mean, say what you want. They make the World Series and gets them there. It has them in the discussion every year. Now, could you argue that once
Padres are in a team of a similar stature, though, using the completely opposite approach to go for it.
They have money.
Padres do not draw. It says who?
They have a huge ownership group.
Padres do not draw significantly.
Yeah,
then
but
someone needs to buy the Rays. Who wants to buy the Rays? Because the Rays don't deserve.
So why would the
this.
Rays owners sell it? Because they're making money on having a successful team. And Rays fans can't be mad if you're a small market team and you get mad. But the Tampa Bay Rays will always be a small market team. So let's just say their payroll went up $50 million. Now they're not making a profit. Their payroll is not going to go up $200
I guess we need a salary cap in baseball. I don't know.
Maybe. Because the payroll is not going to go up $200 million. Like, for a small market team, if you look around all those teams, you look at Kansas City, you look at I'm trying to think of the small market teams top of my head, and it's not coming to me as fast. But start with Kansas City. If you're a fan of the Rays, Milwaukee, you have to look around and be like, we're sustaining success for almost a decade. I'm going to take this. Like, that's kind of the concept I run with. And of course, once they get to this level of sustained success for a decade, let's say, at the deadline, should they be making a trade for a guy on a 1-year deal who's maybe owed $15 million? You know what I mean? Like that kind of move, that I'd agree with. If you're saying add assets once they're at that point and at the end of the year, you can trade them off or you can let them go to free agency and you made a run at it, that I can get behind.
Blake was not owed a ton of money. I believe it's like $39 million over the next 3 years.
That's the problem. I would bet you he'll be restructuring that contract very soon. That's got to be part of the issue because he's a Cy Young. Well, was he a Cy Young winner? Yeah, Cy Young winner. Either Cy Young winner or second place. He was there.
I think he
pretty sure he won. Yeah, I think he won it too. But for him to be getting paid what he's getting paid as a Cy Young winner is a joke. So that's got to be part of it.
You have all the leverage. He can demand a trade, sure, but like.
I mean, he signed a 5-year, that's $10 million a year.
He signed it.
Well, that was before, 100%, but that's a whole different topic for a whole other day. But about players want to do contracts, but that's the nature of sports right now. You believe it or not have more levers than you think as a player. We live in a different time. You look at basketball. Basketball, you want out of a team, all you gotta do is say it. You can have a new team. That's kind of where we live right now. But jump quick here. Staying on the Padres, they do acquire also Yu Darvish, much smaller return for the Cubs. They get a couple mid-tier prospects. They get Zach Davies, who is a decent pitcher.
Zach Davies is
service. Yeah, he'll service. But
I looked through the stats a little bit. ERA plus very high.
Yeah,
he was great for my fantasy team late in the year too.
I just think the trade was different because Yu Darvish is older, owed more money. Cubs are clearly trying to cut money, so it was kind of one of those trades. I think the Padres made out well. I think Yu Darvish is a nice pitcher for them.
Cubs are a money crunch, which also, I mean, obviously I get the whole money crunch thing because, like I said, no one's going to games. You're losing out on a bunch of significant revenue streams. Of course, TV money is still there, so that'll always pay some bills. But Cubs seemingly, I guess this is the new world of baseball that we live in, and it's probably going to cause some issues in a couple of years where I forget when the CBA is up, but I wouldn't be surprised if we head towards a lockout at some point where, in terms of player demands and what they're expecting in terms of their market value, the fact that the markets have just completely dried up here versus where they were a year or two ago. And of course, there's a bunch of factors at play there, but there's going to be some discussions that will need to be had to get everyone on the same page with what the expected market is, what leverage players have in determining that market, all that.
Well, I think we're getting close to a feeling of like NBA style teams where there's just powerful teams that kind of run the dynamic, where teams that have money are going to run for a little bit here because of the lack of money that was in flux last year. You talk about Dodgers, Angels, Padres, Mets, Yankees. Those type of teams are going to run this. I think the Giants will have a way to get back into this mix because the Giants have money also. They'll have the ability to jump back into the mix. So, like at the same point, getting Darvish on I don't know what his contract is. It's fairly high. It's in the 20s, but per year.
I think he's owed like 59 mil over the next.
That's fine for the Padres.
3
That's
years.
probably 2 years left.
I think 3.
Oh, 3. All right. So regardless, that's a good number for them. And yeah, Padres are clearly going for it. They needed to add some pitching, especially with Mike Clevenger being out for the year. But I believe that this will jump right into the next topic here. I believe that this kind of shows what the market's becoming for Trevor Bauer, and this kind of takes a suitor out. He's not going to the Padres now, and that was a pretty heavy suitor. So we got a tweet last night, which ended up being a fun one because they went at it a little bit on Twitter. But John Heyman tweeted, interested teams suggest Trevor Bauer seeks a 5 or 6 year deal for $36 to $40 million, about $200 million. Bauer's coming off a brilliant thing. It would be the record AAV potentially. $36 million was the record by Garrett Cole. Agent Rachel Luba declines comment on talks. Now, I'm going to get you into this saga here. Trevor Bauer then tweets at John Heyman, and he says, John, thank God for you. I'm learning so much about my free agency from your tweets. Keep them coming. Also, Agent Rachel Luba is her Twitter tag in case you want to tag her next time. Then John goes, as he said in the tweet, he says she declined to comment. He said, also, if you're going to go out of your way to report that someone declines a comment, you might want to make sure it's actually true. Don't you actually talk to someone for them to decline? John Heyman then says she declined via text. The agent came out, and this is all saga. This is all just like that
this is
beef that we love. But then Rachel Luba comes out and says the only reason why I declined is because I was on a plane and I couldn't answer you. So there's been a beef all offseason long between Bauer and Heyman. So we don't know what these numbers are for. We don't know what these numbers are coming from. Because if they're not coming from the agent, the numbers are probably coming from a team. And that's interesting to know because teams aren't going to overshoot on a report. They're not going to have Heyman come out and give them the highest possible number because they want to get him at X number. So it's going to be interesting to see if he gets that number. I think at this point, depending on who the suitors are, I mean, what suitors can possibly be left? You have the Mets, I think, are still suitors. I think you have the Dodgers.
35 to 40 million. Is there anybody at this point?
I mean, I would think Mets, Dodgers.
I'm starting to wonder if anyone's willing to pay that.
And maybe
I don't know
that
if it exists.
But I don't know.
I feel like this could drag well into spring training. I think these big contracts, I think all of them. I think DJ, I think Trevor, I think all of these big free agent contracts. This was not the year to become a free agent. You're going to be sitting for a while.
We said that about Machado and Harper, and they both got their $300 million deals.
Well, I don't know. That was a little different where I felt like they were trying to find there were multiple suitors out there. They were just trying to find the best offer. Here is there an offer?
I mean, last year Rendon got his deal from the Angels pretty quick.
Well, yeah, last year there was no COVID. So
yeah, true. But then you look at the same token, you look at his free agency and you have Bauer, who there's really no competition free agency wise that anyone's up like going to get a similar contract to him in pitcher. You have LeMahieu, similar thing at second base, no one's really close. And you have Springer, outfielder, no one's really close. The closest outfielder that needs a contract is probably Ozuna. And
I guess, yeah.
There's going to be a pretty big difference, I think, in contracts there. So, and we're seeing a holdup here. So I am wondering. I think if I had to guess, I'll say the first one to sign out of the big three will be Springer.
Yeah,
if I had to guess.
I would say Springer too. He's the youngest.
And it's seemingly down to two teams. It's seemingly down to the Mets and Blue Jays.
There's the most kind of utility for him where he could, outfielders are different. Obviously, you can put DJ anywhere, but DJ hasn't been, like we said earlier, hasn't been as proven over a long period of time. I just think we've seen that pictures don't necessarily, you don't have to pay pictures. If you don't have to.
I don't know. I think you look at some of the winners and some of the teams that have made it far enough. You have teams like the Dodgers, who needed Kershaw and Buehler to get to that point, especially Buehler last year. I mean, they had a good team around.
There are two ways to go about it. You can put all your chips on the table and try and get the best starting rotation that you can possibly get, or you can go with the Rays model and invest in your dweebs and your analytics and your pitching, your coaching staff, your pitching coaching staff, and try and squeeze the best value out of your pitchers until their value becomes too high for you to pay, and just recycle that process.
So you
either invest in the back end, in the staff, or you invest in the players themselves. And the cost of investing in the staff for these smaller market teams is significantly lower than paying Trevor Bauer $40 million when you could pay a bunch of analytics guys way less than that combined and understand how to get the best value, out of the pitchers that you already have. It's basically why the Rays decided to let Snell go, and now they're bringing in Michael Wacha. I'm sure the dweebs have something figured out on Michael Wacha. He'll probably be great next year, and yeah, they'll figure something out there.
Speaking of dweebs, we have Gary Sanchez, and Gary Sanchez came out yesterday, and I'll let you kind of head it, but I'll say real quick the quote. He was talking about getting benched in the playoffs, and he said, "I didn't know why I wasn't playing." Todd, take it away.
I mean, it's pretty clear why he wasn't playing. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know why you're not playing. You're batting 150 or whatever his batting average ended up being, and you didn't play well all season, and it's the playoffs, and we need quality guys in there to get the job done. Higashioka, well, obviously not as long of a track record necessarily as Gary, but the playoffs in October and late season is all about momentum, and if you don't have the momentum, it's not your time, you know? So for Gary to come out and say, I'm not really sure why I wasn't playing. And then there was the one game, was it game 2 or whatever against the Rays that they lost. And like everybody had a bad game. Gary was in there. I think they said he struck out 3 times that game. He said he had good swings and he expected to be in the lineup the next day because everybody had a bad game. Well, how many alternatives are there on the roster that have been performing? If, Luke Voit has a bad game and goes 0 for 4 for 3 Ks, you're not going to spin Mike Ford because he doesn't have a track record of being able to perform. If Gio Urshela struggles, you're not going to bring in Miguel Andujar in a playoff game to play third base because of the defensive liability there. If Giancarlo Stanton struggles, which, as we all know, it happens quite a bit,
every year,
you're not going to bring in Mike Tauchman to replace Giancarlo Stanton, because if Giancarlo Stanton gets hot, which is very capable of doing, as we saw throughout periods of the Rays series, he can, or actually throughout all of October this year, he can carry your team for a bit. Gary Sanchez has had plenty of time outside of, what year was it, 2015, 2016, where he came onto the scene and was basically the best hitter in baseball from August on of that season. Hasn't done much. He's not great defensively. And I know there are stats that say people saying Gary being a defensive liability is not true. You see how Higashioka calls a game versus how Gary Sanchez calls a game. It's completely different. And you have to understand the relationship between a guy like Higashioka and Garrett Cole, who've been doing their thing together since high school. I'm not saying Gary Sanchez doesn't deserve a shot, because who has better potential, Gary Sanchez or Kyle Higashioka? Gary Sanchez, yes. But show us a little bit here. And not just for 3 games, because we can't have – there were 60 games this year. I know it wasn't a full season, but you can't bat 150 over 60 games. It just can't happen. You can't be a regular catcher and bat 150 over 60 games. It can't happen. So his confusion and kind of playing this like sob story, what was me thing, it doesn't cut it for me.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on Gary, where at times I was like, I think it's Gary Sanchez's fault. At times I think it's the coaching staff's fault. And I'm kind of leaning towards the coaching staff, because you watch him play, it's lazy. It's not a missing
He said
skill.
in that interview he doesn't get why people say he's lazy. But
Well,
I don't know.
if you watch him try to block a pitch, it's the laziest thing I've ever seen in my life. He has no idea how to block a pitch. I
I
mean,
don't know if that's
I say,
lazy or that he just doesn't. He
but
hasn't been taught that skill well.
well, then
Josh
then
Yoga
it's
beyond the plate saved many runs in
well,
that
yeah,
CS
that's a
blocking pitchers. Many
and
runs.
but if you watch Sanchez and
I
Higashioka, the
wish I had
difference
the
in that,
stats on it.
Sanchez is a guy when he goes to block a pitch, he's all glove. You watch him just
Yeah.
backhand, forehand, use all glove. You watch anybody other catcher that not any other catcher. I shouldn't say that. There's plenty of catchers that aren't great defensively, but most good catchers they literally put their whole body down in front of it, while Sanchez is trying to use all glove, and that's the first sign maybe me with laziness. You listen to
It
Hernandez
also
talk
could
on
be a factor of miscommunication with pitchers, which is
every play.
yeah, pretty much. Like a pitcher obviously can throw a wild pitch or throw a pitch that isn't in the intended spot, but if you're on the same page and you know a splitter down in the zone is coming,
Yeah,
you know, okay, there's a possibility that it doesn't
get down.
it doesn't get to its intended spot, and you know the options of where it might end up. Gary seems to just look confused all the time.
I personally feel when it comes to Gary Sanchez, I personally feel like it's not going to change until he gets a change of scenery. That's me. That's my feeling.
I feel like he needs to be retaught.
Yeah, and he's still
He
young
looks
enough to get.
lost.
Yeah,
He's 27. I mean, I guess he's still young enough. In catcher
especially
years,
for a
that
catcher.
isn't that
Yeah,
bad.
especially
I
for a
don't know.
catcher.
I don't buy his whole. I would love nothing more than for Gary to be great, but
I don't see it.
I don't even know if it's his fault. I'm not like critiquing him for saying like, oh, he's lazy, he's not trying. He just doesn't know how there are skills he's missing as a catcher that need to be retaught.
I also think when you're hitting 30 home runs, it's easier to go, oh, his defense is bad, but when you're batting 140 or whatever it was, you go, oh, he's batting 140 and his defense is terrible.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest
they
difference.
amplify each other.
Yeah. Like if Mike Trout, who's best all-around player in baseball, if one year he just hit 360, hit 50 home runs or whatever, like whatever he usually does, but his defense was terrible, everyone would be like, he's just having
No
an
one
off
would
year.
be talking about it. Right.
No, they wouldn't even say he's having an off year. They would just not refer to his defense. You would just go, oh, but he hits. Like in the playoffs for the Yankees, Stanton, who's been a liability, health-wise, starts hitting the ball out of nowhere, and he hits like whatever it was, 6 home runs in 4 games or 5, whatever it was, and everyone just goes, wow, Stan's back. But not even the brains aren't commuting. Yeah, well, yeah, but that's you. We know you by now. You one guy who can never have an at bat for the Yankees the whole year has 1 home run, and you are fully invested.
Pretty much.
But for Stanton, it was like you didn't even compute the fact that he only plays 40 games a year, if that. All that goes out the window in that moment. So that's all Sanchez needs is to have a spurt, a season worth of just consistency hitting-wise, and we'll forget about the defense. But the problem is he isn't hitting, so you can't forget about the
Kind
defense.
of what happened with Clint.
Poor Clint.
Clint improved his defense significantly this year over past years, but also he started hitting, which took pressure, I think, off of him in the field, where he didn't feel like, okay, maybe I'm not providing value at the plate. Let me at least, try and make the big play, try and be the hero in the outfield. He was playing more within himself.
He was pretty bad in the playoffs.
Clint?
He hit that 1 home run against Cleveland, I want to say.
I'll give Clint a pass in the playoffs.
Remember that one ball?
They played Gardner quite a bit.
Yeah, it's true. But you remember that one ball?
If anyone had a bit of a beef in terms of like, why am I not playing? Quint was playing well all year.
But
and then they just kind of went to Gardner in the playoffs.
Gardner's a better
which
bet, though, in the
obviously,
playoffs.
yeah, Gardner puts together better at bats in the playoffs. He's more of a patient hitter. He'll foul off 10 pitches. I get it.
And also, Gardner's not going to make – he may not make a crazy play in the outfield because those days are behind him, but he's not going to make a mistake. He's not going to make a mistake. Yeah. Like that one ball, it keeps going to my head. But there was a ball, I don't know what game it was, that was hit towards the sideline, and Frazier just – he caught it. I think he caught it, but he didn't know anything what was going on around him, and he somehow just
like in the air. It was like a punt. It was like hang time for like 10
right along
seconds.
the foul pole, I think.
Yeah, and he was literally like running around.
He didn't know where the ball was.
We were like, oh my god.
I remember that one. I don't know what's he. I want to say it was the Racers. Yeah, so Gardner's defense is probably the reason why that went that way. Speaking of the ending of the playoffs of 2020 for baseball season, we decided to compile our 2021 MLB resolutions, where we took a couple teams and just gave a resolution for them. I have my 3 teams, so you want me to start?
Yeah, go first.
My first team is the Cubs. And if I'm a Cubs fan, my resolution is I would like the Cubs to trade Javier Baez and Chris Bryant. Put us out of our misery. We're going to lose them anyway. Before we lose them for nothing, let's make sure we get something for them. 2 sides of this is, first side is the Cubs are basically gutting some of the part of this team. Schwarber's gone. Darvish is gone. They clearly want to cut salary. They lose Epstein.
Yeah, probably, I guess.
Schwarber's probably gone. Who knows? But probably. I would think if I'm a Cubs fan and you see the writing on the wall, Epstein's now gone. They start to cut costs here and there. They were doing that last year too. They clearly don't have the money right now. Maybe not both Baez and Bryant. Maybe that's an overstretch. But you should at least move on from Bryant. Because you talk about trade. He's been in trade rumors for 2 years now. And Rizzo. But Rizzo's signed. Is he signed up? May only have 1 year left. May have 1 year left. So, okay, that plays a role too to me then. So these guys that you probably are going to lose, you're probably not giving a Baez $300 million right now. And you're probably not giving Bryant $200 million in this climate. So if I'm a Cubs fan, if you're going to lose them in the offseason, just put me out of my misery and get some prospects. My second one is for the Mets. And as a resolution as a Mets fan, I say stay the course. Now, does that mean keep the roster as is and run it? No. That means don't go crazy. Don't go get Springer, Bauer, and DJ and go over the tax and go nuts. That's silly. There's Mets fans that feel that way. That's silly. Go get Springer. Go get a Jake Odorizzi or a Tanaka. Balance that rotation out a little bit. Get a bat that can help us. And just stay the course. This team has a good core. So don't trade away some of that core. Go get a nice outfielder. You already got your catcher. You got some bullpen help. Make some small moves. Be smart. That's my Mets resolution. Third and final resolution, then I'll let Todd go, is the Angels. And if I'm an Angel fan, my resolution, win the division. Win the division. Whatever you have to do it, however the resolution becomes to get there, as I'm an Angels fan, we've spent enough money now. Go win the division. That's what 2021 is about. At least make the playoffs, but win the division. It's time. Mike Trout is the best player. You could bring him up as the best player ever because he is one of the only players in today's game that you could say any time period you threw him in, he would translate and have success. If he played in the 1910s, he would be Babe Ruth. So
he would be better than Babe Ruth.
Yeah, exactly. He would be the best player. I mean, he probably might. You can put him in that field, but if you have the GOAT of MLB right now, talk about LeBron James in NBA or Aaron Rodgers in football. That's just a name. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is the GOAT, but I'm just saying. Or Patrick Mahomes, if you want to say right now. Win. Those teams win with those players. It's time that the Angels join that club and make the playoffs, win the division, and give themselves a relatively big shot. Bang.
All right. My resolutions, I have 3. They're not do they have to be specific to a team? Because
No,
I think
there's two resolutions.
okay, they're just
Yeah.
baseball. One is baseball in general. Two are semi-team related. But my overall baseball resolution that baseball needs to get better at, in terms of MLB as a whole, market your players. Do a better job of marketing your players.
Mhm.
Everyone says it. No one talks about Mike Trout. He's not on SportsCenter. We talk about LeBron. We talk about Tiger Woods, even though golf compared to baseball viewability wise, probably not there.
Yeah.
We talk about college football. We talk about obviously professional football nonstop. Baseball has been around longer than any of them, and I know people don't like to hear this, but baseball is the American pastime. Baseball is the sport of America. Let's start acting like it. Let's market our players more. I don't know what that constitutes. I don't know if you just need to tweet about them more. Find where these fans are and get them to start paying attention more. I understand a baseball game's 3 hours long, but especially in this COVID world that we live in, there isn't a ton else to do. So sit down, enjoy a baseball game, sit there for 3 hours, whether you're in the stadium, out of the stadium, watching highlights, looking up stats, get people to get interested in baseball at different levels, history, all of that.
Little shameless plug here.
There's something for everybody, baseball-wise.
In the beginning of June, when I was doing my podcasts, I did a podcast with a guy named Miles Mensa, who he does his own podcast, but he used to pitch or play. He was shortstop for Seton Hall University, and we talked all about promoting baseball players in specific, and we talked about other things on that. So if you ever have a chance, go back, watch that. It's on the network. But yeah, no, I agree. I think we talked about the fact that we felt that like women's college basketball promotes their stars better than baseball does.
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Brianna
crazy.
Stewart, college
exactly.
baseball or women's college basketball stars throughout the years, especially UConn's a known brand.
Maya Moore,
Brianna Stewart. Yeah, and nothing credit to them. We're not saying they shouldn't be marketed. Credit to them. But
credit to them.
Baseball, it's not about them getting more love than they should. It's that baseball is doing a bad job.
Yep, and I agree.
Resolution number 2 goes out to anyone who's a free agent in baseball and their agents. And this is specific a little bit to Trevor Bauer. Stop talking about your contract situation on Twitter. It got old. It got old. Everyone with a brain knows that reporters don't necessarily have all the information. Their word is not God. We get it.
So your team, John Heyman.
You're not doing any crusade by coming out and saying you're wrong. We can figure that out. That's up for the public to try and figure out themselves. So
Team John Heyman.
I'm not Team John Heyman. No. I'm not Team John Heyman. No. I'm Team everyone not talking about contract situations until there's something concrete on either side. Whether you're a reporter reporting something out, I don't care about what you heard from X, Y, and Z source speculatively. Same on the agent / player side. I don't care who you think your suitors are and what your market is. That's not going to get fans in the door. When I talk about marketing baseball, they don't care. I mean, people care how much people are getting paid, but usually that starts the opposite argument where people go, oh, baseball players, all these people are getting paid too much, which that's conversation for another day. But that should not be the focus of the conversation around baseball stars.
concur.
Show your highlights. I don't know.
I think one of the
Talk
things
about
that
your favorite pitching matchups that you've had if you're Trevor Bauer. Show me a great pitching sequence that you've had. Do that. Don't just be like, hey, that's what's going on. Hey, at Red Sox, how are you doing? Hey, at Yankees, here's me
but
in my Yankee cap. I don't care.
I think that's part of Trevor Bauer, though. I think that's the allure of him.
It got old. It got old.
For some people, I still enjoy it.
Mm.
I still enjoy it highly. I'm one of those people though that feels like free agency should the deadline for free agents should, if you're signing above whatever, I don't know. I that's not in my
Also, there
opinion.
should be like a week or two that's a free agency period.
Free agent frenzy.
Kind of like what NBA does. NBA,
I mean, they don't do it on purpose, but that's just how they operate. NFL's the same way, and maybe that's mainly hockey's like that too in a way. Maybe that's mainly due to the salary cap. You have to, you know what I mean? Like if you look at the other sports,
there's a clear period. Everyone gets equal shot.
Yep. So I think that's probably part of that. Number 3.
I wouldn't be surprised if something salary cap related comes up or some equalizing the playing field for finances comes into play as money kind of dries up across the board. Resolution number 3 is for the Chicago White Sox. No alcohol on premises. 0.
Todd can't go an episode without
to drink alcohol if you're in the Chicago White Sox organization.
He can't go an episode without mentioning Tony La Russa.
There is no alcohol allowed. I don't want them to sell it to fans. I don't want you drinking it if you're a White Sox fan. You can't have alcohol. I don't want you to have a beer on your couch. You don't.
What if they win the World Series? Can they celebrate with champagne?
No.
Seltzer.
No.
It sounds like a very
for the White Sox is fire Tony La Russa, but
you are team fire Tony La Russa.
Oh yeah.
Do you know that he has 26 cats? Just a random fact about Tony La Russa. It came out a while ago when he was in the front office for the Diamondbacks, I want to say, and I remember it came out randomly, and it's just something that stuck with me for a while. But just a sidebar. Was it 26? Something like that. It was a lot of cats. I'm trying to backtrack.
Alcohol for the Chicago White
17 cats. 17 cats, which is way too many cats.
Yes.
It's a good resolution. No alcohol. No alcohol.
None.
Now,
dry 2021 for the
Chicago White Sox. And as I say that, I drink my beer. Dry 2021.
Well, it's different. You're responsible. You're a responsible drinker.
Final topic here, and this kind of replaces history for the week because it is historic.
Yeah.
And that is the Cleveland Spiders. Now, we could have said 1899 Cleveland Spiders. I went and looked at the roster they had for the time, like the names that were on the roster at some point, because some of the names were there for the 1899, some of them are only there for 1896. But this roster, we briefly touched last week. This roster is something. I mean, some of these names. Now, I'm going to name a few. Todd, you can name a few you liked. Lave Cross. Pretzels Getzian, Sport McAllister, Peekaboo Veach.
That might be one of the best. Peekaboo Veach.
The best.
Are these nicknames, or are they like? I don't understand.
Think
they have to be nicknames.
They have 100%. To be. I think
well, Peekaboo is definitely a nickname.
I bet. I mean,
like the Tebow brothers, Patsy and Pussy Tebow, that might be their real names. I'm not.
Really and I looked, and I actually dove deeper into Patsy and Pussy Tebow, and I looked. There was a third brother.
Oh boy,
that played briefly too. I had it before when I was looking up the rosters. His name was George Tebow. So there was George, Patsy, and Pussy. Imagine the difference. Like, because I feel like Patsy could have been a real name.
I feel like both of those are very possibly the real names.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I don't think they're nicknames. Because Patsy was actually the manager. He was the player manager. Oh wait, no, his name's not Patsy. His name is Oliver.
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 So when did the nickname who came up with the nicknames for the guys?
And like the other brother's name,
the poor Tebow brothers.
The other brother's name, that is his name is Pussy. His first name is Charles. Why take on that nickname? But this is a different era, so it could have meant something different, obviously. But like if you have a name that I can't even search on Google without with every other name I search, it gives me, oh, you meant this, blah blah blah. You can't even search that; it won't come up because they don't want you to do it.
Right.
But the Tebow brothers were something. Cowboy Jones. Cy Young actually was on this team briefly. I found that out. Icebox Chamberlain.
That's an all-time name. Icebox Chamberlain. That's like he would be like number 22 in the Royal Rumble. He'd be like, oh my God, Icebox is here.
Louis Sock Alexis. That can't be his last name. Sock Alexis is his last name. I'm looking it up.
Sock Alexis?
Oh, it is his last name. Yes, Sock Alexis. That's his last name. Everyone else is pretty the same. But, I mean, these names, are just...
Cowboy Jones.
And I feel if you lived in that era, that was probably just their nicknames. So you probably knew their first names at that point. Just like today, if there was nicknames, we would know the first names. But, I mean, to look back...
Well, they don't list the nicknames.
No, I think it's different. Yeah. I think it was just different then. My favorite is Pretzels. I mean, there is nothing better. Actually, him being named Pretzels was my favorite until I found out that the Tebow brothers have real names and it wasn't Pussy and he just went by that. That is now my favorite thing.
I got in a bit of a pre-1900s baseball loophole the other day and found out that the 1890 World Series, granted, every World Series before 1903 was essentially an exhibition between two different leagues. What was the National League and I think what was called then like the American Association or something. The 1890 World Series, Brooklyn Bridegrooms versus the Louisville Colonels ended in a tie. Game 7 was a tie. And also the attendance numbers there just went after game 1. It was like 6,000 for game 1. By the time they got to game 7, it was like 600 people were at the game. Like nobody cared, I guess. And the best player on the Brooklyn Bridegrooms, about a name here, I believe his name was Oyster. I'm pretty sure that was the name. Oyster Burns.
You froze a little for a second.
It's spotty right now, and I can't get on here to confirm that.
Yeah.
But I'm 99.9% sure that it was Oyster Burns.
Oyster, or I'm looking it up as we sit here, but Oyster Burns is something. Yep, Oyster Burns, professional baseball player. He's with the Brooklyn Bridegrooms. But I just went on a quick rabbit hole of some previous 1800 baseball names, and one guy was named Johnny Dickshot, and another guy's was named Dick Pole. Tim Spoony Barger.
Wasn't there like a Spoony Barger? I feel like that's a recent baseball player in the past 30 years.
Yeah, he was on the Braves and Marlins. Good thought there.
He was recent.
Yeah, no, I'm on a list that had those older names, and then it
Uh,
kind of mixes in some new ones. But yeah, these names back Pickles
Love that.
Dillhofer pitched in 1917.
The
Um,
Dillhoffers,
I just think up until like 1950, they just like went by nicknames.
pretty much.
I think that was just like a thing.
Yeah.
And that is history with the On the Bump Boys.
Didn't you want to give what's his name a shout out? Sorry.
Oh, I do want to give a
I
shout out.
said
You're right.
what's his name.
Where's my no, that's okay. Where's my oh
I
god.
don't know his name, so I called him what's his
I'm
name.
startled. Tony DeFrancesco, who was the Mets first base coach last year.
Friend of the pod.
Big friend of the
Shout
pod. He's actually a family.
Tony DeFrancesco.
Yes, family friend. He's
Ooh.
brother-in-law's uncle, so very close family friend and awesome guy. And he wasn't, like I said, Mets first base coach. They were waiting to see where he was going to end up. He was going to stay with the Mets organization most likely. Good relationship with Sandy. He has took a position in the front office. He is going to be the something with scouting. I'm getting the exact title, so I don't say it wrong. He's going to become a senior advisor for player development and scouting. So he'll work hand in hand up there in the front office. Good spot for him. And yeah, he's an awesome guy. He was actually up there. Heard it here first, although you didn't. But it was funny, and I had to stop myself. So last week, little sidebar here.
I
had got a tip about a player for Appalachian State. Well, it was he was the quarterback for Clemson. Yeah. So the coach of Appalachian State, who's a good friend of mine I had on the podcast, messaged me and said, "Here's a tip." And I was doing something, so I didn't get it out right away. He said, "I have a tip for you. You can send it out on Twitter." So it was confirmed that a quarterback from, I believe now he was at Duke, named Chase Bryce, was transferring to Appalachian State. I tweeted it out, and apparently this guy tweeted it out before me, and like was like, you know, wanted credit or something, and he was like, "You should have added me." And I'm like, and he messaged me, and sir, let me tell you something.
Did you send him the screenshots of your previous DM?
I DM'd him, and then he
What
didn't
did he
answer me.
say? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just told him what happened. And now two things, sir. Okay. If you want credit for your breaking news and you want to be a reporter, fine. Have at it. It's probably not going to work for you. But just do it. If you want to like blast someone on Twitter, just go do it. I'll give you credit next time. I'm not trying to be a reporter. I just got a tip. And two things, you didn't have it before me. So I'll give you credit, but if you really need it, his name is Walter Keith Freeman, a semi-retired journalist. You should just fully retire because it's just stupid.
Whoa, okay.
Sorry, I was aggravated last week and I was waiting for the podcast. Walter Keith Freeman, you straight guessed on the story, and that's fine. That's more than fine. And he has it on his like.
Yikes.
So this is the funny part. Now I'm sorry, Walter, I'm going in, but the funny part to me is
Walter.
poor
This
Walter.
isn't even a football podcast. What are we doing?
I know. I'm sorry, but he's so proud. He's so proud.
I guess
he pinned the tweet to the top of his
Twitter. So
he pinned the tweet to the top of his Twitter, and it has like 36 likes, and he pinned it. Like he's so. You know what, Walter? You had it first. If you're listening, Walter Keith Freeman had the report first. Chase Bryce is going to Appalachian State. Good job, Walter. We give you an applause on the podcast. Sorry, I was set off. But back to poor Walter, man. Back to Tony DeFrancesco. Proud of him. Good job for him. He gets a job in the front office, which is a good step up for him. I think he'll be great in that role, and I think he'll get better. I mean, he's worked with a bunch of minor league teams, so he's good with the growth and stuff. I think he'll be awesome there. So we wanted to give a quick shout out to Tony D. And that's the podcast. Again, I want to apologize to who I offended today, mainly Walter, who I just offended. It was a great podcast.
Last of 2020.
Yeah, last of 2020. So we'll come back 2021. Maybe we won't be mean to anybody anymore because I feel like I was mean. I feel like last week I came at a reporter. I feel like last week I went after someone too. It's just in my brain that I went after somebody. I'm sure I could have. yeah, so that was the On the Bump podcast, episode 11. We want you guys to have a happy and safe New Year.
Oh yeah,
Because we want you to keep listening to the podcast. So we need you to be safe.
be safe.
Todd, any parting
Stay
thoughts?
safe, kids. Stay safe, kids. 2021 baseball coming soon. Let's
Baseball
go.
coming soon. 2021 On the Bump. It'll be episode 11 coming out. Probably you'll see it Wednesday or Thursday. Thank you guys. See you soon.
See you.
See you, man.